In 2019, a team of linguists at the University of Oxford finished translating a 4,500-year-old clay tablet that had been sitting in a basement archive for over a century. The tablet came from Eridu, the oldest known city in human history, located in what is now southern Iraq. It had been catalogued in 1911 by British archaeologists during excavations led by R. Campbell Thompson, then shipped to Oxford and essentially forgotten. What they found wasn't a grain receipt or a king's decree. It was a genealogical record, a bloodline. And according to the translation, that bloodline didn't just rule ancient Mesopotamia, it claims to rule now. Active, present tense, not past glory but current power. The researchers published their findings in an obscure academic journal with limited circulation, then went silent. 2 of them left their positions within 6 months. The tablet itself was moved to an undisclosed location, removed from the standard catalogue system that tracks artifacts. So what did they actually find? And why does a piece of clay from 2500 BC, covered in wedge-shaped marks made by a reed stylus, make people nervous in 2024? If you're interested in ancient mysteries and hidden history, hit subscribe. We cover stories like this every week that the mainstream won't touch. New investigations drop every Tuesday and Friday. Now, let's talk about what makes Eridu different from every other ancient city we've discovered. Because understanding the city is essential to understanding why this tablet matters. Eridu wasn't just old, it was the first. According to Sumerian texts, it was the city where kingship descended from heaven after the Great Flood. The Sumerians believed their entire civilization started there, around 5400 BC. Modern archaeology confirms continuous habitation going back at least 7,000 years. The city's temple, the Abzu, was rebuilt 17 times on the exact same spot over thousands of years. Each civilization that inherited Eridu considered it too sacred to relocate. The city was dedicated to Enki, the Sumerian god of water, wisdom, and creation. Enki wasn't a war god or a storm god, he was the keeper of knowledge, the one who gave humanity the arts of civilization, writing, mathematics, agriculture, and according to some texts, the secret of the bloodlines. In Sumerian mythology, Enki was known as the friend of humanity, the god who warned Ziusudra about the coming flood and taught him how to survive it. This is significant because Enki's role wasn't to rule but to preserve and transmit knowledge across cataclysmic events. That last part is what makes the tablet important. It's not mythology, it's methodology. The tablet in question is called the Eridu Genesis Fragment, though that's not its official designation in the Oxford Archive system. It's written in archaic Sumerian cuneiform, a script so old that only a handful of specialists can read it fluently. The translation took over 4 years because the dialect predates most known Sumerian texts by several centuries. Some of the grammatical structures don't appear anywhere else in the cuneiform record. The Oxford team used AI-assisted pattern recognition to cross-reference the symbols with later Akkadian and Babylonian texts. They built a database of over 50,000 cuneiform signs to find contextual matches. What they pieced together was a narrative that reads less like mythology and more like a historical record. It has dates, it has locations, it has genealogical specificity that myth typically lacks. It describes a council of 7 individuals who survived a catastrophic flood, not the biblical flood. This one happened earlier, around 10,000 BC according to the geological markers referenced in the text. These 7 were called the Apkallu, which translates to sages, or those who know the secrets. In later Mesopotamian tradition, the Apkallu were semi-divine beings who brought civilization to humanity. But this tablet describes them as survivors. Human survivors with knowledge from the world that came before. The tablet claims these 7 established the first kingship at Eridu. But here's the part that made the researchers uncomfortable. It doesn't say they ruled, it says they selected rulers. They were the power behind the throne. and the tablet provides a genealogical chart showing how their descendants maintain that role across millennia. The chart uses a specific term that translates to unbroken line or continuous inheritance. The chart doesn't stop at ancient Mesopotamia. It continues forward, through Babylon, through Persia, through Rome, through the Holy Roman Empire. And it lists specific family names that still exist today, not symbolic names, actual surnames that appear in modern records. The researchers redacted those names from their publication, but the original tablet photographs leaked online in 2021. The names are visible if you know where to look and can read archaic Sumerian. The leak happened through an anonymous academic sharing platform, and the images were downloaded over 40,000 times before the hosting server took them down. 3 of the families listed have members in current positions of significant financial power. One sits on the board of a major central banking institution that influences monetary policy for over 30 countries. Another controls a multinational investment firm that manages over $8 trillion in assets and has stakes in thousands of corporations worldwide. The third owns media conglomerates across 4 continents, with holdings in television networks, film studios, publishing houses, and digital platforms. Before you dismiss this as conspiracy theory, consider what the academic response has been. Not denial, silence. The University of Oxford removed the research paper from its public archives within 3 weeks of publication. The lead translator, Dr. Miriam Fawcett, a tenured professor with 20 years of experience in ancient Near Eastern languages, declined all interview requests and deleted her professional social media accounts. Her university profile page now returns a 404 error. When an investigative journalist from The Guardian tried to verify the story in 2022, they were told the tablet was undergoing conservation and unavailable for independent examination. No timeline was provided for when that conservation would be complete. The journalist filed a Freedom of Information request. It was denied on the grounds of academic confidentiality. That's not a standard classification for archaeological artifacts. That kind of institutional closure doesn't happen over a fake artifact or a mistranslation. It happens when something verifiable threatens an established narrative. Mistakes get corrected publicly, frauds get exposed, genuine threats get buried. The tablet also describes the methodology these bloodlines use to maintain power. It's not conquest, it's administration. The text uses a Sumerian phrase that translates roughly to "the hidden hand guides the visible fist." The Apkallu descendants didn't become kings. They became advisors, priests, treasury officials, and record keepers, the people who decide what gets written down and what gets forgotten, the ones who control the narrative while others control the territory. This matches a pattern historians have noticed but rarely talk about publicly. Across multiple ancient civilizations, there's a recurring archetype of the royal counselor or the keeper of secrets. In Egypt, the high priests of Ptah, who controlled the House of Life, the ancient Egyptian equivalent of a university and library. In Rome, the Vestal Virgins, who guarded the sacred fire and the state archives, privy to secrets that could destroy political careers. In medieval Europe, the Knights Templar, who managed the early banking systems and held the debts of kings. These weren't random occurrences. According to the Eridu tablet, they were branches of the same administrative structure, adapted to different cultures, but serving the same lineage. The tablet even describes a symbol, a specific cuneiform marker, that appears in the official seals of these administrative positions across different empires. Archaeologists have found this marker, but dismissed it as a common scribal notation. The tablet says it's a signature, a way of identifying members of the network. The tablet describes their primary tool as the control of inscriptions. In ancient times, that meant controlling who could read and write. Literacy was restricted to a tiny elite, and that elite decided what history said. They could erase entire dynasties with a chisel and a hammer. They could invent divine mandates. They could make a peasant rebellion disappear from the record entirely. In the modern era, the control of inscriptions looks different. It's media ownership, it's search engine algorithms, It's fact-checking organizations funded by the same families, the tablet names, same function, different technology. One section of the tablet talks about the Great Forgetting. It describes a deliberate effort to erase knowledge of the pre-flood world, not because that world was primitive, but because it was advanced in ways that would make people question the narrative of linear progress. The tablet claims there were technologies and social structures that were intentionally buried, both literally and metaphorically. This aligns uncomfortably well with anomalies archaeologists have found, but struggle to explain. The Antikythera mechanism, a 2,000-year-old analog computer found in a Roman shipwreck, the precision stonework at Pumapunku in Bolivia, the advanced metallurgy in the Baghdad battery, these aren't evidence of ancient aliens. They're evidence that technological knowledge has been lost and recovered multiple times throughout history. And according to the tablet, those losses weren't accidental. They were curated. Knowledge was preserved within the bloodline and released to the broader population only when it served their interests. Here's where it gets specific. The tablet mentions something called the Archive of the First City, a physical repository beneath Eridu that contains records from before the flood, not myths, records, maps, engineering documents, astronomical charts, and genealogies. The tablet provides architectural details, a chamber sealed with bitumen and bronze, accessed through a shaft beneath the innermost sanctuary of the Iabzu temple. If that archive exists and if it's been accessed, then the families named in the tablet would have information about human history that contradicts everything in our textbooks. They would know what civilizations existed before Sumer. They would know what caused the flood. They would know what technologies existed in the pre-cataclysm world, and they would know the full scope of what was lost and why it was never rebuilt. Several archaeological surveys of Eridu in the 1946 and 1990s reported finding sealed chambers beneath the main temple complex that were never excavated. The 1946 expedition, led by Fuad Safar and Seton Lloyd, noted anomalous ground-penetrating readings suggesting voids beneath the earliest temple layers. The official explanation was lack of funding and political instability in the region, but funding has never been an issue for sites with potential blockbuster discoveries. Tutankhamun's tomb got funding immediately. The Terracotta Army got international backing within months. The Dead Sea Scrolls got immediate attention and resources from universities and museums worldwide. Sealed chambers beneath the world's oldest city, potentially containing pre-flood records. Apparently, not worth the investment. No major museum has sponsored excavation. No documentary team has been granted access. The site remains partially excavated, and the Iraqi government has been strangely uninterested in exploring what could be the most significant archaeological find in human history, unless someone already knows what's down there and doesn't want it public. The tablet ends with a phrase that the Oxford team translated as "the cycle completes when the hidden becomes seen." It's ambiguous. It could mean the bloodline's power ends when they're exposed, or it could mean their power reaches its apex when they no longer need to hide, when the system is so entrenched that exposure doesn't threaten it. Given the trajectory of the last few decades, concentrated wealth at levels not seen since the Gilded Age, media consolidation into the hands of 6 major corporations, the merger of corporate and state power into what some economists call neo-feudalism, you could argue we're watching the second interpretation play out in real time. 3 families named on a 4,500-year-old tablet from humanity's first city show up in modern financial and media power structures. The academic institutions that could verify or debunk this have gone silent. The artifact itself has been hidden away. The researchers who worked on it have either disappeared from public view or refused to discuss their findings. Maybe it's all coincidence. Maybe the researchers got the translation wrong, misread the cuneiform, made errors in their genealogical interpretations. Maybe the tablet is a forgery that fooled cuneiform experts, radiocarbon dating, and spectroscopic analysis of the clay composition. Or maybe some bloodlines really do run deeper than history admits. Maybe the people who write the textbooks have a vested interest in what those textbooks say. Maybe the people who own the publishing houses that print those textbooks, and the media companies that decide what history documentaries get made, and the foundations that fund archaeological research all have reasons to keep certain things buried. And maybe a clay tablet from Eridu just said the quiet part out loud. The University of Oxford still hasn't made the tablet available for independent analysis. Dr. Fawcett still hasn't spoken publicly. Her co-researchers have scattered to different institutions or left academia entirely. And the families named in the leaked photographs haven't issued statements, haven't filed lawsuits for defamation, haven't demanded retractions or corrections. Their silence might be the most interesting part of the whole story. If you want to see more investigations into suppressed archaeology and hidden history, subscribe and turn on notifications. And if you think there's something to this, check out our deep dive into the Sumerian king list and why it claims some rulers lived for thousands of years. That video is on screen now. The archive beneath Eridu is still down there, sealed, waiting. Someone knows what's inside, just not us.